On a misty morning in 1773 Boston, the harbor lay quiet, yet beneath the calm waters, secrets churned that could shake the foundations of an entire continent. A young man, Samuel Hawthorne, stumbled upon letters hidden in his grandfather's old study. Letters that spoke of conspiracies, secret societies, and a hidden hand guiding the birth of a nation. What he would uncover next would challenge everything Americans thought they knew about their own history. The hidden letters. Samuel Hawthorne had always felt a pull toward history, but he never imagined he would uncover it in such a tangible, almost dangerous way. The letters were hidden behind a false panel in the wall of his grandfather's study, tucked away with the care of someone who wanted them preserved but never seen. Each parchment was delicate, the ink faded but still legible. They spoke of covert meetings in Boston taverns, coded messages sent across the Atlantic, and even alliances with European powers. Some names mentioned were famous, others forgotten. But together, they painted a web of intrigue that suggested America's fight for independence was influenced by forces far beyond the colonies. As Samuel traced the letters' origins, he discovered a pattern. Shipments arriving from London, peculiar bank transfers, and even mysterious deaths that were quietly documented in newspapers. It became clear that these letters weren't just personal correspondence. They were pieces of a puzzle that could rewrite history. Secrets in the tavern. Samuel's first lead took him to a tavern near the waterfront, a place that had existed since the 1600s. The tavern's owner, old Mr. Whitaker, remembered tales of men in cloaks who would meet in shadowed corners, exchanging whispers and secretive gestures. Samuel imagined the room as it might have been over 2 centuries ago, candlelight flickering against the wooden beams, voices lowered, and hands moving over maps and ledgers that held the future of America in ink and paper. Through patient investigation, Samuel uncovered references to a group calling themselves the Liberty Circle. They were said to be behind early smuggling operations that funded the revolution, but also involved in manipulating political outcomes. Some letters suggested they even guided major figures like John Hancock and Samuel Adams, shaping public opinion in subtle but critical ways. The more Samuel read, the more he realized that the official history books told only half the story. The real story, he understood, involved a network of hidden actors whose motives were sometimes noble, sometimes self-serving, and always dangerous. The Shadow Network. Samuel Hawthorne could hardly sleep that night. The letters had hinted at something larger than petty political rebellion. They spoke of a shadow network operating across the colonies, orchestrating events that would determine the very course of the American Revolution. He began to map the names and locations mentioned: Boston, Philadelphia, Charleston, even as far as New Orleans. Each figure he uncovered had connections to merchants, sailors, and sometimes even British officials who were covertly sympathetic to the American cause. What struck Samuel most was the sophistication of their operations. They used codes, invisible ink, and even musical notes to transmit messages. One letter detailed how a tune played on a harpsichord could convey safe or danger, depending on the rhythm. By the following week, Samuel realized the network had a long-term vision. The independence of the colonies was not merely a spontaneous uprising, but a carefully orchestrated series of moves designed by hidden hands. Some of these hands were patriotic, but others were driven by greed or personal vendettas. It was a dangerous game, and history had only shown the winners. A Boston secret. Determined to find more, Samuel visited the old State House in Boston. He studied the architecture, the old courtroom, and the famous balcony where revolutionaries had once spoken. In the archives, he discovered records that didn't match the official narrative. Meetings held at night, shipments of silver, coins mysteriously disappearing, and testimonies that had been lost over time. One particular document caught his attention: a ledger of clandestine funding for the Sons of Liberty. It listed amounts of money, names of donors, and destinations. Among the names was a previously unknown figure, Elias Thornton, a wealthy merchant whose descendants would later claim little involvement in the revolution. But Samuel's research revealed that Thornton had quietly funded critical events, including the Boston Tea Party, and even ensured that certain newspapers spread propaganda favorable to independence. It became clear to Samuel that history had been written not by events alone, but by people skilled in shaping perception, finance, and information. Every revolution has heroes, but every hero often has shadows guiding them. Across the colonies, Samuel's research took him beyond Boston. Letters pointed him to Philadelphia, the cradle of American independence. There, he discovered correspondences between European diplomats and colonial leaders. One startling letter from a French ambassador suggested that France had been prepared to provide military aid months before the colonies officially requested it, but only if certain secret agreements were made. The web of intrigue grew denser. Samuel realized that major battles, alliances, and even seemingly minor skirmishes were influenced by this hidden network. Historians had documented the battles, the speeches, and the treaties, but these letters revealed why some decisions were made and why others were quietly suppressed. In Philadelphia, Samuel also uncovered a small but critical society, calling themselves the Vigilants. Their aim was to ensure the revolution succeeded, but not for the freedom of all, rather to establish a certain vision of the new nation. Their meticulous planning, their secret couriers, and coded letters had already shaped the destiny of America long before the Declaration of Independence was signed. The secret code. Samuel spent nights deciphering the letters' codes. At first, it seemed impossible: cryptic symbols, random numbers, even musical notations. But slowly, patterns emerged. Some messages were simple substitution ciphers, while others required knowledge of historical events to understand fully. One letter revealed a shocking plan: a secret coordination between colonial insurgents and French agents in New Orleans. The goal wasn't just independence, it was control of trade routes, political influence, and even the banking systems of the emerging nation. Samuel realized that the revolution he had learned about in school was only the surface. Underneath lay a carefully plotted strategy by shadow networks that manipulated power behind the scenes. The Vigilantes. The Vigilantes were more than a society. They were an organization with reach and influence that spanned the colonies. They maintained secrecy through coded correspondence, covert meetings, and even hidden rooms in taverns and private estates. Samuel traced their influence to the Philadelphia Convention of 1787. There, he found evidence suggesting that some of the Constitution's clauses had been subtly influenced by this secret society. Certain amendments, he discovered, had been drafted to protect the interests of wealthy merchants and foreign allies, not just ordinary citizens. It was a revelation that shook him. History was not merely recorded, it was engineered. And the people who controlled this hidden machinery remained unknown to the public, even centuries later. Boston revisited. Returning to Boston, Samuel discovered a diary belonging to a ship captain who had transported secret documents across the Atlantic. The diary detailed near miraculous escapes, coded messages hidden inside tea crates, and alliances with shadowy figures in London sympathetic to the colonial cause. The captain's entries revealed that many famous revolutionary events, including the Boston Tea Party, were orchestrated with precise timing and careful planning by people whose names would never appear in textbooks. Samuel realized that behind every public act of heroism was a hidden narrative of strategy, risk, and intrigue. The European connection. Samuel followed the letters trail to Europe. In London archives, he found correspondence between British officials who were aware of secret networks in the colonies. Surprisingly, some British politicians secretly funded revolutionary activities to destabilize rival European powers. The letters revealed that the American Revolution was not only a rebellion, but also part of a broader Geopolitical chess game. France, Spain, and Britain were maneuvering through allies and covert funding, and the colonies were the board. Samuel could hardly believe it. What Americans thought of as a fight for freedom was also an international game of influence, strategy, and secret pacts. Dangerous knowledge. By now, Samuel was a target. Shadowy figures began following him, warning him to abandon his research. But the historian in him was unstoppable. Each new letter, each hidden ledger, each forgotten document added pieces to the puzzle. One night, he discovered a hidden room in an old Boston warehouse containing letters, maps, and ledgers detailing the Revolutionary War in ways no official history book had ever recorded. The network had anticipated every major battle, every political move, and every economic shift. Freedom, independence, and democracy all had been carefully navigated under the watchful eyes of invisible strategists. Samuel realized he held knowledge that could change the way Americans viewed their own history. And if it fell into the wrong hands, it could also be dangerous. Hidden alliances. Samuel realized that the Shadow Network was far more interconnected than he had imagined. Letters pointed to secret alliances not only within the colonies, but also across the Atlantic. French bankers, Dutch merchants, and even some British aristocrats were quietly supporting certain revolutionary leaders. Their motivations were not purely ideological. They were investing in the future of America to secure trade, land, and influence. One particularly revealing letter described a covert meeting in a Philadelphia mansion where foreign diplomats and colonial leaders had discussed the ideal future of the United States. They plotted not only independence, but also the economic and political structure of the new nation. Samuel marveled at the audacity. While the public saw protests and battles, these secret actors were shaping the nation. Behind closed doors, the Boston map. Back in Boston, Samuel discovered a faded map hidden in an old tavern. At first glance, it appeared to be a typical harbor map, but careful study revealed a pattern of markings, locations for secret meetings, safe houses, and coded routes for smuggling letters and supplies. This map explained much about the efficiency of revolutionary efforts. It wasn't luck or chance that allowed patriots to act with precision. It was meticulous planning by unknown strategists. Samuel began to see the true power of information in shaping history. The letters, the maps, the secret codes, all pointed to a single truth. History is often written by those who remain unseen. The Philadelphia Ledger. In Philadelphia, Samuel uncovered a ledger hidden beneath the floorboards of an abandoned colonial home. The ledger contained records of money and supplies sent across the colonies. Some of it supported revolutionary militias directly, but much of it funded shadow operations, bribing officials, spreading propaganda, and manipulating public opinion through newspapers. Among the entries was the name of a previously unknown figure, Nathaniel Wren, a mysterious financier whose influence extended from Boston to Charleston. Samuel realized that Wren, like many others, operated in secrecy, and yet his actions had directly impacted the course of battles, negotiations, and even the drafting of laws. The music of messages. One of the most unusual revelations came from letters detailing the use of music as a communication tool. Certain melodies, when played in specific taverns, indicated whether a meeting was safe or compromised. Samuel experimented with reconstructing the tunes and was astonished. They contained hidden messages encoded in rhythm and tempo. This discovery revealed a sophisticated level of intelligence and secrecy in the Revolutionary era that modern historians rarely acknowledged. Every song, every public gathering, and even everyday interactions could have hidden significance. Samuel's understanding of history began to shift. Dramatically, freedom had been fought not only with guns, but with strategy, deception, and coded communication. Danger in the shadows. As Samuel dug deeper, he realized that knowledge of these secrets made him a target. Unknown figures began following him through Boston's narrow streets, and anonymous letters warned him to stop. Yet, the historian in him could not abandon the search. One night, while studying a set of letters in a hidden compartment of his grandfather's study, he found a note warning of imminent danger. Those who seek the truth must beware. The past does not forgive. Samuel understood that the secrets he had uncovered were powerful enough to threaten the modern world if misused. Shadows over the Delaware. Samuel's journey took him to the Delaware River, where hidden correspondence suggested secret troop movements had been influenced long before the battles were fought. Letters from anonymous sources described how information about British troop positions was leaked in advance, sometimes deliberately by insiders with dual loyalties. Samuel realized that the victories and defeats celebrated in history books were not always the result of battlefield heroics alone. Strategy, intelligence, and manipulation of information played an equally critical role. In some cases, the very outcome of battles have been swayed by these shadow operatives, unseen but ever present. The vigilant ledger in Philadelphia. Samuel uncovered a hidden ledger detailing the vigilance' extensive network. It documented clandestine funding, covert meetings, and instructions to manipulate colonial officials. Certain entries hinted at even darker measures: bribery, threats, and the silencing of dissenters. This ledger forced Samuel to confront a difficult truth. While the revolution had noble ideals, the means by which independence was achieved often involved moral ambiguity. The public narrative of heroes and villains obscured the intricate web of strategy and compromise that truly shaped the nation. Boston's hidden rooms. Returning to Boston, Samuel discovered a series of hidden rooms beneath the city's oldest taverns. Inside, he found remnants of coded letters, maps, and artifacts that revealed how key events, including the Boston Tea Party, had been meticulously orchestrated. One small leather-bound book contained instructions for covert communications, including invisible ink, made from common ingredients of the time. Samuel realized that ordinary citizens were unwitting participants in a carefully controlled game, where every act of protest and rebellion had been planned, down to the last detail. The French connection. Samuel's research led him to the French archives, where he discovered letters confirming France's early involvement in supporting colonial independence. Surprisingly, France's support had been conditional. Certain trade agreements, territorial arrangements, and political promises had been made in secret. The letters suggested that the American Revolution was part of a larger European strategy, where empires competed for influence and resources. Samuel was astounded. Freedom, he realized, was intertwined with diplomacy, espionage, and financial leverage in ways most Americans would never learn. The price of knowledge. By now, Samuel's obsession had put him in real danger. Unknown figures followed him, warnings escalated, and he began to receive cryptic messages suggesting that some secrets were meant to remain buried. Yet, the historian in him could not turn back. Every new discovery, the letters, ledgers, hidden rooms, coded messages, painted a picture of history far more complex than the textbooks portrayed. Samuel understood that the very idea of independence had been navigated by unseen hands, carefully guiding the nation's birth. For Samuel, the thrill of discovery was intertwined with fear. Knowledge was power, but it was also dangerous. And some of the most powerful forces in history had always preferred to operate in the shadows. Secrets of Valley Forge. Samuel's investigation led him to Valley Forge, where he uncovered journals and letters suggesting that Washington's army had received secret intelligence that ensured strategic victories. These documents described how supply routes, troop movements, and even morale-boosting propaganda had been subtly influenced by unknown actors in the colonies and abroad. One journal described coded messages delivered by musicians and merchants, ordinary citizens who unknowingly participated in a network designed to secure the American cause. Samuel realized that the survival of the Continental Army wasn't just due to leadership and resilience, but also to careful orchestration by invisible hands working behind the scenes. The Forgotten Patriot. Among the letters, Samuel found references to a forgotten figure, Jonathan Merrick, a man whose contributions had been erased from official history. Merrick had acted as a courier, spy, and strategist, guiding critical decisions without ever seeking fame. His meticulous record-keeping revealed the breadth of the Shadow Network and its influence over pivotal moments in the Revolution. Samuel began to understand that history's heroes were only part of the story. Behind every celebrated figure lay unsung patriots whose work had quietly shaped the nation's destiny. The recognition of these forgotten individuals could rewrite the American narrative entirely. The European Web. Samuel's research took him further into Europe, uncovering letters between colonial leaders and foreign diplomats. France, Spain, and even the Dutch had invested secretly in the revolutionary cause, seeking to weaken Britain and gain strategic advantage. These letters detailed clandestine financial transfers, covert meetings, and the planning of supply lines. For arms and intelligence. Samuel realized that the revolution was not a purely American endeavor. It was an international chess game, with colonial independence as the prize, and power, trade, and influence as the stakes. The Vigilance Legacy. Back in the colonies, Samuel discovered the enduring influence of the Vigilance. Their network had survived beyond the Revolution, subtly shaping early government decisions and the creation of financial institutions. Certain clauses in the Constitution, economic policies, and even foreign treaties bore the fingerprints of this hidden society. Samuel's understanding of American history began to shift dramatically. The Revolution had not been chaotic or purely spontaneous. It had been steered with precision by a network of visionaries, strategists, and opportunists. Freedom had a price, and that price had been paid in secrecy, strategy, and moral ambiguity. Danger at dawn. As Samuel delved deeper, he realized that revealing these truths could have modern repercussions. Anonymous warnings escalated into direct threats. One night, he narrowly escaped an attempt to steal his research. It became clear some forces wanted these historical secrets buried forever. But Samuel's determination only grew stronger. He understood that uncovering history's hidden truths was a dangerous, yet necessary pursuit. Every letter, ledger, and map was a key to understanding the real story of America's birth, one filled with bravery, manipulation, intelligence, and shadowed conspiracies. The Battle of Secrets. Samuel's research revealed that some key battles of the Revolution had been heavily influenced by covert intelligence. Letters described how shadow operatives fed false information to British commanders, misdirected troop movements, and even supplied strategic maps to colonial generals. At Saratoga, for example, Samuel uncovered documents showing that the British underestimated rebel positions due to carefully orchestrated misinformation. The victory, celebrated as a turning point in history, had roots in invisible strategies executed by people whose names would never appear in textbooks. The Spy Who Changed History. Among the most astonishing revelations was the role of a colonial spy named Eliza Carrington. Her letters, hidden in the archives of a Boston merchant, describe how she infiltrated British supply chains and delivered critical intelligence to General Washington. Samuel realized that Eliza's work had influenced not only battles but also political decisions. She was never publicly acknowledged, yet her courage and cunning shaped the revolution's outcome. Samuel began to piece together a list of forgotten patriots whose silent contributions had altered the course of history. The Continental Ledger. Samuel traveled to Philadelphia to study the Continental Ledger, a hidden record of funds, supplies, and covert operations. He found evidence that shadow networks funneled resources to key locations, manipulated local officials, and ensured that strategic messages reached the right hands at the right time. This ledger revealed the organizational genius behind the revolution. The war was not just fought with muskets and cannons. It was orchestrated through intelligence, logistics, and financial manipulation by a network that valued strategy over fame. The European influence. Further investigation in French and Dutch archives revealed that Europe had played a far larger role in the revolution than commonly acknowledged. Letters detailed the coordination of funds, arms, shipments, and secret diplomatic pressure designed to tip the scales in favor of the colonies. Samuel realized that the revolution was not only an American endeavor, but part of a global chessboard. Every strategic victory, every negotiation, and every turning point was influenced by international players working behind the scenes. The hidden city. Back in Boston, Samuel discovered a hidden network of tunnels and safe houses beneath the city. Maps, letters, and artifacts revealed that the Vigilance and other shadow societies had prepared for years, establishing secret routes for communication, supply, and escape. Samuel walked through these tunnels, imagining the patriots, spies, and operatives who had moved, unseen beneath the city, shaping history with every silent step. It became clear that the birth of the United States had been guided by careful planning, clandestine operations, and the courage of those willing to act in the shadows. The unseen strategists. Samuel began to fully appreciate the scope of the shadow network. The letters, maps, and ledgers revealed that many of the revolution's major decisions were influenced by strategists who had never been publicly recognized. Some were wealthy merchants, some were diplomats, and some were ordinary citizens whose courage and cunning had tipped the balance of critical battles. Every victory, from Lexington to Yorktown, had been influenced by information carefully disseminated through secret channels. Samuel realized that history, as popularly understood, was only the surface. Beneath it lay a complex game of strategy, manipulation, and unseen influence. The Forgotten Heroine. One letter contained the remarkable story of Abigail Fenwick, a woman who managed to relay critical intelligence to rebel leaders across Boston. Using a network of couriers, coded messages, and covert signals, she ensured that key movements of British troops were anticipated and countered. Samuel was struck by the courage and precision required to operate in secrecy. Fenwick's contributions, like those of many others, had been erased from the official history books, yet her influence on the outcome of battles had been profound. The European chessboard. Samuel's investigation into European archives revealed an astonishing truth. The revolution was part of a much larger geopolitical game. France, Spain, and even the Netherlands were not merely assisting the colonies. They were strategically positioning themselves to benefit from British weakness. Letters detailed secret agreements, armed shipments, and financial support, all carefully calculated to influence the war's outcome. Samuel realized that American independence had been negotiated not only on the battlefield, but also through international strategy and covert diplomacy. The Vigilance final plans. Back in Philadelphia, Samuel discovered a cache of documents detailing the Vigilance final plans to ensure the new nation's survival. Their network extended far beyond the revolution, influencing early government policies, trade agreements, and foreign relations. Samuel was astonished. The vigilantes' influence was subtle, yet pervasive. They had shaped the Constitution, protected financial systems, and even guided the development of cities, all without public recognition. Their careful planning ensured the stability of the young republic, even as ordinary citizens believed freedom had been won purely through open rebellion. Danger at midnight. As Samuel compiled his findings, threats intensified. Anonymous letters warned him to stop, and he narrowly escaped an attempt to destroy his research. The historian understood that some secrets were powerful enough to endanger lives, and yet he could not abandon the truth. He continued to study the letters, maps, and ledgers, realizing that the story he was uncovering would challenge every conventional account of the revolution. History had been engineered by unseen forces, guided by visionaries, opportunists, and strategists whose influence had endured for centuries. The Boston Betrayal. Samuel discovered letters indicating that not every colonial leader had been loyal to the cause. Some had been secretly negotiating with British officials, hoping to protect their wealth and position regardless of the revolution's outcome. One particularly shocking document revealed that certain critical victories had been achieved despite deliberate sabotage from within. Samuel realized that trust, secrecy, and intelligence had been as important as courage on the battlefield. The revolution was not just a story of heroes. It was a complex web of loyalty, betrayal, and hidden agendas. The hidden couriers. Letters and ledgers described the lives of secret couriers who risked everything to deliver messages across colonies and even to Europe. They traveled at night, coded letters hidden in everyday objects, from books to musical instruments. Samuel reconstructed one of these courier routes and marveled at the logistics and planning involved. Without these invisible actors, entire campaigns could have failed. The ordinary citizens he had always overlooked were, in fact, the invisible backbone of the revolution. European pressure. Samuel's investigation in European archives revealed a stunning revelation. Britain had been aware of French and Dutch involvement in the colonies, but underestimated the coordination of their efforts. Letters from London officials expressed frustration and concern over intelligence leaks that consistently undermined military campaigns. This revealed to Samuel that the revolution was not only an American struggle, but a carefully orchestrated international contest. Independence had been achieved not solely through rebellion, but through global strategy, covert diplomacy, and financial manipulation. The Vigilance legacy unveiled. Samuel discovered documents proving that the Vigilance continued to shape the young nation even after the revolution. Early financial policies, foreign treaties, and even the establishment of strategic cities had been influenced by their planning. Their goal had been clear: to ensure a stable, prosperous, and independent America, but one carefully guided by those who understood power, information, and strategy. Samuel realized that modern Americans owed not only gratitude to celebrated heroes, but also to these hidden architects of history. The historian's dilemma. With all his discoveries compiled, Samuel faced a critical choice. Revealing these secrets could rewrite American history and shock the nation. It could honor forgotten patriots, but also expose the complexity and moral ambiguity behind independence. Threats against him grew, yet Samuel's determination strengthened. He understood that history is not merely what is written in textbooks. It is shaped by those who act in shadows, whose courage, cunning, and ambition leave a legacy for generations. The forgotten battles. Samuel uncovered letters revealing that several critical skirmishes had been guided by hidden strategists. Troop deployments, timing of reinforcements, and even the outcomes of small engagements had been influenced by shadow networks. For example, at the Battle of Trenton, Samuel found documents showing that the Continental Army's success relied not only on Washington's leadership, but also on intelligence provided by an unseen web of operatives, some of whom risked their lives in secrecy. History books celebrated the bravery, but omitted the invisible guidance that made victory possible. The Lost Patriots. Among the papers Samuel discovered were accounts of forgotten patriots who had ensured critical victories. One letter described a young woman, Margaret Thornton, who smuggled vital messages and supplies across enemy lines. Another described a merchant, Thomas Ellsworth, who secretly financed entire battalions without seeking recognition. Samuel realized that the revolution was as much about invisible courage as it was about celebrated heroes. These individuals' contributions, though erased from official history, had shaped the nation profoundly. The international web. Samuel's research in European archives revealed that French, Spanish, and Dutch powers had orchestrated support in subtle but critical ways. Arms shipments, intelligence sharing, and even financial interventions were planned to maximize strategic advantage. Letters between diplomats suggested that the American Revolution had been anticipated and carefully guided by international actors. Samuel understood that the war for independence was not only domestic. It was a carefully coordinated global strategy. The Vigilance Master Plan. Samuel pieced together the Vigilance long-term vision. Beyond ensuring independence, they had anticipated the need for political stability, economic frameworks, and foreign diplomacy. Their influence extended into the creation of early financial institutions and the structuring of trade policies. These hidden architects had created a roadmap for the young nation, shaping events behind the scenes. Samuel marveled at their foresight and strategic genius, realizing that freedom had been designed, not just fought for. The historian's revelation. As Samuel assembled his research, the full scope of his discovery became clear. The American Revolution was a tapestry woven with courage, strategy, secrecy, and international influence. The celebrated narrative of heroes and battles represented only the visible thread. The hidden threads, spies, financiers, couriers, and secret societies had been just as critical. Samuel realized that understanding history meant recognizing both the heroes who fought openly and the unseen hands that guided their every move. He faced a monumental decision: reveal the truth and potentially shake the foundations of what Americans believed about their history, or preserve the secrecy of these hidden architects whose work had safeguarded the nation. The final letters. Samuel uncovered the last set of letters hidden in an old Boston chest, covered in dust and time. These letters detailed final instructions for the Shadow Network's operatives, emphasizing that their actions would safeguard the nation's future even after the revolution ended. One letter, unsigned but authoritative, read, "History must remember freedom, but only the wise will know the hidden hands that made it possible. Protect the truth, for its misuse is as dangerous as its ignorance." Samuel realized the enormity of his discovery. The revolution's outcome had been carefully navigated, not left to chance. Every victory, every treaty, every law was influenced by these unseen actors. The unsung heroes. In compiling his research, Samuel honored the lives of countless forgotten patriots. Margaret Thornton, Eliza Carrington, Jonathan Merrick, Abigail Fenwick, Thomas Ellsworth. All had risked life and fortune in shadows. Their courage and ingenuity had shaped the nation, yet their names were absent from history books. Samuel understood that the story of freedom was incomplete without recognizing these unsung heroes. Their legacies, hidden for centuries, were as critical as the visible triumphs celebrated in monuments and textbooks. The modern implication. Samuel considered the relevance of these revelations for the present day. The hidden strategies, international influence, and meticulous planning behind the revolution echoed in modern governance, diplomacy, and finance. He realized that understanding history fully required acknowledging the invisible forces that shaped events. Freedom, leadership, and independence were products not only of open heroism, but also of unseen intelligence, strategy, and sacrifice. The historian's choice. Faced with the decision to publish or conceal his findings, Samuel reflected on the warning in the final letter. Knowledge is power, but it is also dangerous. Revealing the truth could redefine history, honor forgotten patriots, and inspire new generations. But it could also provoke controversy, political upheaval, or even threats to those involved. In the end, Samuel chose a middle path. He would reveal the stories of the unsung heroes, the courage in the shadows, and the intricate strategies that shaped independence, without exposing modern descendants or sensitive secrets. The legacy of the revolution would be told more fully, but responsibly. Legacy in the shadows. Samuel's work reshaped how he, and eventually others, understood the birth of the United States. History was no longer a simple narrative of heroes and battles. It was a tapestry of visible and invisible threads, woven together by courage, intelligence, and strategy. As Samuel closed the last of the letters, he realized that freedom was both seen and unseen, celebrated in secret. The nation's foundation rested not only on bravery in the open, but also on the careful, hidden guidance of those who acted without recognition. The shadows of history, once concealed, now told their story, complex, astonishing, and full of truth. And Samuel Hawthorne, the historian who dared to follow them, had ensured that these hidden legacies would never be forgotten.